The views expressed on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast are that of Jerry Cahill and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who is experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Jerry Cahill and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to the Jerry Cahill CF podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and jerrycahill.com.
Welcome to Jerry Cahill's CF Unmasked podcast series. In a world where everyone wears a mask, it's nice to see a soul. This show, Life Beyond Addiction with CF, was made possible through an unrestricted educational grant from the Allergan Foundation to the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Today you will meet James O'Connell, 37 years old, from Aurora, Illinois, adopted at birth by his grandparents and diagnosed at 3 years of age. James is happily married to his wonderful wife, Nicole. Throughout James's life, singing, playing music with friends, and the outdoors have been his passion. For several years, between late teens and 30 years of age, James struggled with addiction and unhealthy choices related to his inability to cope with the daunting mental and emotional task of living with and managing cystic fibrosis. Fortunately, he has resolved many of his demons through some harsh consequences and lessons, and lives in the forward with a can-do attitude, taking ample care of himself and valuing his life and those who are part of it.
Hi, my name is Jim O'Connell. I'm 37 years old, born and raised in Aurora, outside of Chicago, Illinois. I've been married to Nicole for 3 years. I have a brother and a sister, 11 and 12 years older than myself. I was adopted by my paternal grandparents. I also have cystic fibrosis, and I've struggled with addiction issues. Growing up, I felt that I just could never really be myself, and I also felt that my health took precedence over any other qualities or defining pieces about who I was as a person. I was not one who hid my illness. I was a kind of person where I was interested in differences, so I wanted to share, and with that came a lot of rejection. Being that lonely at such a young age, when it's already easy to feel awkward about so many things in your life, was a very serious problem for me because I did not have the outlet of genuine relationships and friendships. When I was growing up, we did not have a strong CF team like many clinics do today. Being told at 6 years old that I would not probably live longer than high school, the way that they dove into that conversation with me, I still vividly remember. Most children don't think about future, they think about today. And immediately I went from a child who only thinks about today to a child who thinks about, I might not have a tomorrow. And that scarred me for life. I was also dealing with being adopted and having children actually say to me, your parents didn't love you, that's why they gave you up. It became very easy for me to feel that the only interesting thing or worthwhile part of me that deserved attention was my illness. And so I turned against people's love and the affection and the energy that they poured into me. I feel that my diagnosis of cystic fibrosis limited me socially, and so my using substances kind of compensated for that because I was able to be accepted by, oh, look at Jim. He's crazy, man. He can party like we do. He's not physically limited like we are. For me, alcohol was an escape, not just something to experiment with or to have fun with. Just taking a couple swigs of alcohol made me feel physically better. I was relieved of a lot of my pain or aches. And also mentally, I just felt like I could do anything and there was no problems. Substance abuse for me started with alcohol, then developed in marijuana, and then in my 20s, early 20s, it became a cocaine problem. It took over every part of my life. I went to an inpatient treatment program for 28 days. I was with a lot of adults. I was probably the youngest person there. One thing I remember about the day that I left treatment is they had what was called the coin pass around, or the coin ceremony. And you would get a coin and they would pass it from person to person. And when it got back to my counselor, I remember him sitting there and he looked at the coin and he said, "I just can't help but think we'll be seeing you again." And he handed me the coin, and I'll never forget that. It was not long before I started to go back out with friends and drink and have alcohol in my room and hide it. All of this drugging and drinking and living crazy and not taking care of myself ultimately led to a serious decline in my health. It ended up also causing a very serious legal situation in my life when I was jailed. I went out on a bender. I went out one night and I got raving drunk. I found my way to acquire cocaine. I got pulled over because I did a U-turn in my car, and I had the stuff sitting right in my passenger seat, and they walked up to the car, they smelled alcohol on my breath, and then they looked and he said, "Oh, and what's that there?" And as soon as he said that, I knew that my life was really, really over at that time. I started to have a panic attack and I started coughing, and they asked me if I had health problems, and I told them cystic fibrosis, and they took me to the hospital. So I sat in the hospital thinking every day, I'm gonna get out of this. When I get discharged, they're gonna forget about me. And 7 days later, they tell me I'm discharged. A cop comes in my room and he takes me with him. And they took me to Will County Jail. Jail was horrible. Jail was what you see on TV, but worse. You're always looking out for your safety. I was in jail for 3 weeks. I could have been in there a lot longer. My parents were done. They were going to let me stay in there. The only reason I ended up getting out was because my father could not get medication to me that I needed. And so they ended up bailing me out. Then it was arranged for me to go to a program in Chicago, which was a spiritual Christian program. The recovery process that I went through led me to a church recovery program, which led me to a family and a beautiful woman who I fell madly in love with. And that is when I started to truly accept somebody's love, that I had things that were worth loving. Today I stay motivated and healthy and clean by doing healthy activities and by being surrounded by healthy people. I'm a lot more compliant with my medications now than I was in the past. One of the biggest blessings that I have in my life is knowing that I got to show my mother that I was serious about my health and my life before she passed away. She was the absolute biggest supporter and fighter for my health. I have no doubt in my mind that my mother is proud of who I am today, and that there's a spirit still out there of hers watching me and seeing what I'm doing today. The silver lining in my life today is that I have gone down the wrong path. I've made a lot of the wrong choices. But where I'm at today, I have been able to turn things around because I choose to take care of myself. I choose not to use drugs and drink it anymore. And I would be remiss if I did not show appreciation to my wife, Nicole, for loving me and for showing me true love and for being honest with me and for allowing me to be accountable to her. It's not easy for a wife of somebody with cystic fibrosis, but she makes it look easy. A lot of the physical pain that we deal with, life expectancy, lung function, hospitalizations, am I gonna get sick if I go to this group or hang around with these friends, leads to a lot of emotional pain. And so we, as people with cystic fibrosis, need to find healthy avenues and healthy outlets to realize that this life is worth living. And I really believe that we need to improve that as part of the overall rounded cystic fibrosis treatment protocol. We are the champions.